Meeting the president was, of course, when you walk down the aisle to, then get the medal, you feel really proud. You can't deny it. Anything, you just can't deny that feeling. Meeting Modi, it was actually, I liked it better than meeting the president. I just don't know why, but Modi has an amazing aura around him.
Hello and welcome to STEM and Research Podcast. Today we have Harsh Agrawal with us, who is here to speak about his story with STEM.
Harsh is interested in computer science, cancer research, and entrepreneurship. For his work in developing a non-invasive, low-cost, strip-based test for pancreatic cancer detection, he was awarded the Bal Shakti Puraskar by the President of India and was honored by the Prime Minister as well. He is also an ISEF 2020 finalist and a 2020 Global Team Leader. Hi Harsh, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me here.
Sure. So right away, let's talk about your previous work. You've utilized machine learning in the past for various projects. Please tell us about virtual RoboGym.
Sure. So Virtual RoboGym was the first project that I worked on. It was the project that I initially went to IRIS, which is the India's largest science and engineering fair in 2017, with my elder brother, Master Shresh Agrawal, who was an ISEF alumni in the past year 2016. That project was basically using reinforcement learning, which is a type of machine learning to train robots in a virtual simulations. So what happens is whenever we train any machine directly in real life, it's a very cumbersome process. And using machine learning, you'll have to do trial and error, and then the machine learns by iterating itself. And if you do that by a real machine, at first it'll have a lot of losses, and that is very time consuming as well. So what we did was we used virtual simulations as an alternative, and through those virtual simulation and using a reinforcement learning, which is similar to how we humans learn by interacting with the environment and getting rewards. That was what we created and demonstrated by training a robot that was a humanoid first in the virtual simulation. And once it was trained in the virtual simulations, those training parameters, which are in computerized terms called weights and biases, those were then transferred to the real robot for getting a very high result in the real life. So that project, through that project, I also got qualified for another national fair, which is the FGSI, Foundation of Global Science Initiatives, that happened in 2018 in Delhi. Yes.
Okay, so what exactly did you train the robots to do?
We tried a lot of things, but we wanted to demonstrate that complex tasks could also be trained using our algorithms. So we trained it to walk, and a parameter was that if it can walk for like a defined range without falling, then yes, it is successful, or else it'll have to reiterate again. So that was the task that we trained it for. It couldn't do it completely, but we were able to train other robots like a car to actually follow a desired path, and then a robot that can move his arm based on an ultrasonic sensor, so if anything comes, he can raise his arm or anything.
Okay, so you said you used reinforcement learning for this. Can you talk about maybe what were the rewards that you fed into the model?
Sure. So rewards were decided on the basis of the tasks. So for the walking task, for every episode, if, as I told earlier, if the robot was able to travel a particular defined distance, then we gave it a huge positive reward. Whereas for every time step that passes by, we gave it a negative reward for every time step, so that he finds the shortest path in that. And then if the robot falls down, that calls for an instant termination. So that was the reward procedure. And then for other tasks, it was something similar. So for a car following a trajectory that we wanted to follow, if it's so the distance between the trajectory at that point and where the car is right now, so the Euclidean distance between those, that would be fed as the negative of that would be fed as the reward, so that it has to minimize that distance and follow the trajectory that we're asking it to. And that was how the Markov decision process when it was initialized. Our environment was created using a Python simulation, and we used very simple constraints as just, I think it was just gravity for once. So there was gravity, a plane, and the reward function, as I told you, and that was all that formulated the reinforcement learning problem.
Cool. That's pretty cool. So you've also worked on this project called Mine Now. Can you talk about what it is?
Sure. So this year, the Australian government recognized a very big global challenge called the Gawler Challenge, and that is to predict mineralization using machine learning by any approach. So with mine now, it was me and another classmate of mine who created this three-step approach that predicted more than $300 billion worth of minerals in a region of Australia that is called the Gawler region. Now, to dive more into it, we used three separate machine learning models. Our first model predicted that given the geophysical features, such as the gravity anomaly at that region, what is the radiation at that region, what is the elevation, the ground point elevation at that region, and subset of those features as input, does that location will contain any mineralization or not. So we had the data of already existing mines and minerals. So we had the data of mines that of dug location that had mineralization. We also had the data of locations that didn't had, and that we used as a training data. So our first model predicted that whether in a location, given those geophysical features, would it have mineralization or not. Our second model predicted that given a mineralized locations, so the output of the first model was fed into the second model. So given a mineralized location, which mineral would most dominantly be found there? So there were 61 mineral categories that we used in the training data set. So out of those 61 minerals and metals, which one would be found there? And the third model would predict the type of deposit. So the results of the second model would then be fed into the third model, and it would predict whether the size of the deposit is small, medium, or large. And that was depending on the unit ppm. So ppm is the unit that is parts per million, and that is how we analyze the size of the deposit. So small, medium, and large were the three categories that it was categorized. So that was the three models. All the models had an AUC, the area under curve, which is a metrics that we use for evaluating classification models. All had an AUC of 97 or 0.97, and individually they had an accuracy of 90 to 92%, which was quite good on the validation data set. And then once we had the model trained, what we did was to find new mineralizations. What we did was we selected a region in the Australia that we created a polygon around Australia that was the Gawler region. And then we plotted all the already existing mines and minerals that had been found. And what we did was, excluding those points specifically, we extracted all the other points that was spaced 2 kilometers apart. And then we used those data as a validation data set and then parsed. So there were around 725,000 points that were completely unexplored, undug. We passed it through the first model, which classified that 350,000 points would have mineralization, and our model 2 and model 3 subsequently classified which mineral and the type of mineral deposit at every point.
Okay, so did you use the same model or like the same types of models, or were they different?
Yeah, so we used, the first model was a binary classification model that was trained using an H2O's auto ML algorithm, which tries a lot of different models to see which model works best. There were other models that we could try, other distributions such as Keras and TensorFlow, but none worked out as well as AutoML's H2O. So first was the binary classifier. The second was a multi-class classifier. So that was a separate model, and it had 61 classes. And the third was also a separate model, which was also trained using H2O's. It was trained using H2O's driverless AI, so you don't have to write any code, but it's really powerful as it uses Cloud's GPU. So there were three separate models. The first was a binary classifier, and the second two were multi-label classifiers.
Okay, so this was one of your more recent projects, right? You said you did it for the Gawler challenge. Would you like to elaborate on what the challenge was?
Yeah. So by the government of Australia, they outlined the Gawler region, which is the southern Australian part, and they predicted that it is a very rich source of mineralization, and it created an open challenge. It posted all the resources that were available, and it was a 3 month challenge that I think began in late April or May and ran till July 31st, which was its deadline, and that was to use machine learning and all the existing any type of existing data to predict mineralization. So you can use any approach. It was open to machine learning enthusiasts. It was open to geologists. So you can use any approach but to predict new and novel mineralization. So that was a challenge overview. There were $200,000 in awards. So the first award was $100,000. The second was $50,000. I think there was $250,000. So, and then there were $20,000 sub awards in 4 or 5 different categories. The eligibility was 18 plus, though I somehow managed to get into that. It was a challenge, but yeah, the eligibility was 18 plus, and there were student awards as well.
Okay, and you're still waiting for the results to come out, right?
Yeah, that will come out in mid-September, if I'm not wrong.
Well,
Okay,
all the
that's
best. So, as we already talked, quite a few of your projects are related to CS, but you're also very interested in biotechnology. So, maybe you could touch upon how exactly did you get interested in biotech?
Sure. So when I first began with the first project, that was virtual RoboGym. It was completely about computer science and machine learning. But seeing that the impact that we need is in something that is biological, because yes, CS can impact a lot, but there was a fire inside me that wanted to do something more, create a bigger impact. Because yes, these projects, computer-based projects, they had impact, but unless you didn't do anything related to humanity and how it could directly help them, I couldn't, shut down. So that's why I was super excited to do something that was related to biology. And so I had no idea about cancer or pancreatic cancer. It was just that, that dream that I wanted to work something related to that field. And so there is a very good doctor who's also, kind of a mentor and a friend to me. And so another colleague of mine, Anmol, he was working on a separate project on waste management. And I was working on virtual RoboGym. And then we came together, and he had the same kind of philosophy in his mind, and he wanted to work for biology as well. So we came and we went to that doctor. We simply bluntly asked him that we want to do something related to biology and save lives. What can we do? So he listed a lot of things, a lot of really complicated things as well that we couldn't understand. But then when we did our own research, and then we stumbled upon cancer, that like everyone does. But then we dug a little bit deeper, and then we found out we wanted to solve a problem that was urgent, not a problem that we could easily solve, because that's what thousands of people are already doing. So we focused our search into what cancer was the hardest to detect, and that's when we hit upon pancreatic cancer. Being situated so deep inside, it is like nearly asymptomatic, so you wouldn't know any signs and symptoms unless it's in the advanced stages, like stage 3 or 4. And so that's when we decided that we need to work towards it, and if we want to save lives, we need to detect it early. And that's when a problem statement formulated, that is to detect pancreatic cancer in the early stages. And that's how things started happening. We already had an interest in it, and that drove us forward. And we have a really huge support from our mentor, Mr. Sushil Kumar Pandey, who is our school's chemistry teacher. And me and Anmol, we knew each other from a very long time, and so we stayed connected as well. And we had also worked on separate projects, so we knew how research can be carried out. And so all the factors, includingly everything, just came together, and that's how things just started.
Okay, so you've worked quite extensively on it, and you call it CancerEX, right?
Yeah, we call it CancerEX now.
Okay, and for this project, you received the Bal Shakti Puraskar and the IRIS Grand Award.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you want to get into it and talk about what exactly CancerEX does?
Sure. So initially, it started, as I already mentioned, it started as a science project, but then we, wanted to make it an initiative. So we just didn't want to limit this as a high school science project, because we had already put a lot of effort in it, and this is something that will require a lot of time, and that we already knew from the day one. But we were ready to pitch in our time, and so we turned this into an initiative. So our project was early detection of pancreatic cancer, and a very big long name, but we turned it into CancerEX, and we included another part in it that was to detect. So one part was the strip-based test that can detect pancreatic cancer in the early stages using saliva. But then we wanted to have a second level of engagement, and so we created a web application that, given your like simple features such as age, your country of residence, your dietary preferences, any medical history, using those features, it will predict your risk of developing this cancer in your lifetime. So with the strip-based test, we use this as a second level of engagement, and that this formulates the root of CancerEX. This is what we do, and our mission is to detect pancreatic cancer in the early stages to save, to increase the dismal survival rate of this cancer from 5 to 7% to at least a double-digit number. So that is our mission, and currently the progress for the strip-based test is halted, but we are working extensively on the web application part.
So just a quick question here is, are the web application part and the strip based, like, they together give the diagnosis? So are they independent or like dependent on each other?
So they can work independently, but we plan to make them interdependent. So to give a collective diagnosis. So our plan for the web application is to actually find the populations, in the world that are at higher risk, because there is no metric that can tell you that you as a person, what is your risk of developing pancreatic cancer. So you can analyze by yourself that you drink, you smoke, but there still exists a very, a standard metric that can do that. And so with the second part, we want to establish that metric so that we can actually target populations and then suggest them to use our strip-based test regularly to see if they, get detected with diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Okay, so I think you briefly touched upon this, but what exactly were your expectations with this project in the beginning? Did you expect it to become as big as it did?
We didn't knew. So we wanted to do something like this, and it's still a long way to reach the destination, reach when we can finally market this, finally give it and sell it to people. But yeah, we have gone a long way. Initially, when we started, we thought we picked one novelty at a time. So when we started, we just wanted to make a test that can detect it early, right? Then we wanted to make it accurate. So we started focusing on accuracy. Then when we knew about lateral flow tests, we got to know that yes, this is very point of care, so we can make it inexpensive. And then we thought everything is done. There's just one more novelty left. How can we make it non-invasive? And so we put the saliva aspect in it rather than using blood. We use saliva. And so we worked on one novelty at a time, and that was how our work was stretched. So everything didn't come up as like just popped in. That will use saliva, lateral flow assay, merge everything up, and you got this simple strip-based test that can do everything. So one by one, the steps happened. We didn't know about it. It was a suggestion from a lot of mentors and doctors that we met along the way. Some of them who we still are connected with, some we aren't, unfortunately, but it was a suggestion of a lot of people, and luck played a very important factor in it as well. But I'm highly enthusiastic that it is what it is now, and I hope that it keeps on growing.
Okay, so can you tell us about the timeline of this project? When did you start ideating? When did you start executing?
Sure. So I guess it was 2018 when when I finished with virtual RoboGym, and it was August or September of that year when me and Anmol initiated pancreatic cancer and we need to work on it. I think we had a basic idea of using a strip-based test in the December-January part of 2019. And then it was in the January-February part when we invested a lot of our money to buy the reagents and do our initial testing. So a company we mailed out to, I think, 50 to 100 companies to help us out and develop these strips. One finally responded. It is called MedSource Ozone Biomedicals. It was a Faridabad-based company who helped us actually develop this. But we had no idea how cohort testings and how a biomedical study takes place. So we messed up the first test, but we did get good metrics that inspired us to move forward. So we bought, I think, $1,500 worth of reagents, and then we shipped them to their facility. They developed the strips for us. We collected actual samples from cancer patients, shipped it to them, and then they did the testings. And that was the time when we received an accuracy of nearly 80%. But it was a very, very, very small cohort. It was just 8 patients. So we couldn't conclude anything much. But yeah, it was inspiring seeing that, yes, it is kind of working. That was all we needed to move forward. And then then came the 10th boards, I guess. So the project was halted. And then we picked up the web application part, I guess, when the boards ended in April. In June, we went to the Genius Olympiad, which is one of the biggest, just like ISEF, it has representation from 80 different countries and 1,800 exhibits. And fortunately, we won a gold medal there. So we put a lot of effort from April, May into that. From July, August, we started looking for the second testings. And so for doing that, an amazing mentor joined us in that. And we started to focus on, taking a step back. So rather than creating the strips and then testing them, we can use something more quantitative to analyze what's going inside. And so we started working on the ELISA part. It was September when we applied to IRIS. And so when we got qualified for IRIS, I think that was the month, September, October. We had a lot of applications for IRIS, for Yale Young Global Scholars, for Bal Shakti Puraskar, Diamond Challenge. So that month, those 2 months were just all, went up in applications in part. January, we went to the IRIS. And then from January, February, we had mentoring camps. We furthered our project. Our web application was completely ready. We bought the reagents for the second testings. We arranged a lab. We arranged the ELISA test. We formulated everything. We even collected a few saliva samples. We were supposed to conduct our test in late March, early April. But I think it was that time when India announced its first lockdown. And so we had a test that was in procedure, but it's halted. So that is the timeline. If the lockdown eases and the pandemic kind of goes away in the near future, then it'll take us like 3-4 months to have a solid proof of our hypothesis, and then we can move to a bigger cohort testing.
That's really cool. Yeah. So let's just talk a bit about the science behind your project. So maybe you could start by talking about how you chose your biomarker and which biomarker you chose.
Sure. So we read a lot of papers regarding which biomarkers would be most prudent for us. And so there was this amazing paper. It was not a paper, but it was rather an article about Jack and Raka, who won the ISEF's Gordon Moore Award in 2012. And his was a simple paper-based test that can detect pancreatic cancer. And we were like 2-3 months into it, and we were like, dude, we have to do something like this. A paper-based test, it can detect it. He won the Gordon Moore Award. This is something there. But we found nothing. We just knew that his biomarker was mesothelin. We searched, and from press, we got to know that the founder of mesothelin, he actually criticized this project because it was not a prudent biomarker. And so we were like, dude, we can't work on mesothelin or something. We even wrote a few mails to Jack and Raka to see if he would be willing to connect and work with us, but no response from him. But then we were like, okay, all right. So we found a lot of blood-based biomarkers. Initially, we were thinking to use combination of biomarkers. So there were like 2-3 combinations, including CA99 and CEA. which are like antigenic biomarkers that are standardly used, but if you use them in combination, they increase the sensitivity by by a humongous factor. And so we thought we would use combination biomarkers, but then that would make the test really expensive. And so we shifted our focus to finding biomarkers, that one biomarker that could do it. And so we started searching for blood-based biomarkers. We got to know about microRNAs, but then they're very hard to detect, and you can't detect them on paper because you need to do DNA replication, and then there's a lot of science behind it. You can't do that simply on paper. And then we're like, we need simple biomarkers, effective, and everything. So there was a lot of factors coming in, weighing in. And then we switched to saliva. That was the time we switched to saliva. And then after research, we found a paper titled Elevated polyamines in the saliva of pancreatic cancer. And that paper, it was outlined that there were 4 very promising polyamines, which are a group of biomolecules, which are very small amino acid connected biomolecules. And these were highly prominent. These could prove to be highly prominent biomarkers for pancreatic cancer. And they did a study, and one of their biomarkers, spermine, that had an excellent specificity of 85%. And that was in saliva. And so we were like, dude, this is it. They found a biomarker in saliva. We just need to make sure that we can do this on paper. So that was how we finalized the biomarker. For finalizing the strip-based test, we went to a lab where a technician was demonstrating the ELISA test. So an ELISA is a 96 plate well where you put it by pipettes, and then you incubate it, put a lot of reagents, and then you get a color change, which you observe in a machine. So he was demonstrating us that, and then we were just roaming around the lab, and we found that there was a simple strip-based test, and there were like 2-3 lines similar to that in pregnancy test strip. And then we just simply asked him out of curiosity, can you tell us about what this is? And so he told us about lateral flow assay. He gave us its guide. So they get a guide with every, they order it in batches. For every 100 pieces, they get a guide how to use it. So I requested him the guide. He gave us the guide. We studied the guide extensively. We were highly amazed by this, and we were like, finally the puzzle pieces are falling in together. We had the biomarker when we had the test. We had to just combine it together. So we created a very, a protocol by ourselves. We wrote it about how can we do this. We sent it to the company, Metzos Biomedicals, which we were searching parallelly. And they agreed to develop it. We had no idea how they did that, because there was so much maths that we ignored. There was so much calculations and other factors that we ignored. We just sent them a premature protocol, but they somehow developed that. But they couldn't work for us further because they had to put in a lot of their resources, because we weren't ready to invest a lot of our money yet. So basically the science part, talking about the science part behind it, lateral flow assay, it uses something called a target antibody. So an antibody binds specifically to one molecule or one biomolecule per se. So for our biomarker spermine, which is found to be elevated when a person has pancreatic cancer, what we do is we use anti-spermine antibodies. So these antibodies specifically bind to spermine, and then they have a gold conjugate paired to them. This gold conjugate actually provides color so that we could use it and read it through the naked eye. And what it does is, so you have an antibody which is targeted, bound to a conjugate, and then you have your target, which is the spermine itself. So what you do is, when you put like 2-3 drops of your saliva, it travels through capillary action, it travels further, all right? And so there is a part when we actually deploy the antibodies. So that the concentration in which we deploy it is actually the threshold. So for example, if a threshold is 5 and above 5 you have cancer, below 5 you don't. So we deploy exactly 5 units of the antibody there. And so if in the saliva we have 5 units of the target spermine, it will bind with everything. So everything will get saturated, and then we detect it using a probe. All right. But if it doesn't, then all the unbound antibodies are detected separately. So the inference is that if one line appears in the testing membrane, that states that it is a positive test, because everything was detected at one site. Whereas if 2 line appears, that means that partially it was saturated, and so it's a false test. So that's basically the science part behind it.
So I know you already mentioned cohort testing before, so maybe you could talk about these stages. I know you touched upon it briefly, but maybe you could just elaborate here.
Sure. So for cohort testing, we got 8 voluntary patients. So 5 had pancreatic cancer, 3 didn't. So those 3 were our controls. And then saliva samples were collected from them, and that was shipped. And we had a total of 16 tests, with 1 sample being used twice. And there was a randomized control trial, so we paired saliva samples randomly. And then we had 4 batches of the testers that we prepared. That was by changing a different reagent every time in all those 4 batches. And so out of those 4 batches, out of those 16 tests, 10 were supposed to be true and 6 were supposed to be false. So that was the metrics that we needed. Out of the 10, we had 8 true, and out of the 6, we had 5 true. So, and the others were false positives and false negatives. So that was quite accurate, and that was really, really surprising and amusing. That was our first, I think that was the only cohort study that we conducted. The other is ongoing.
Right. So since we're on the note of experimentation, could you compare it to the current method? So maybe you could talk about the current market, and then how is your product really making a difference?
Sure. So it has, on the limelight part of it, our strip is, I think, 1,000 times cheaper than the current gold standard MRI and CT scans, which is used to detect these types of cancers. Other than that, it's more sensitive and accurate than the gold standard blood test, which is the CA99 blood test that is currently used in diagnosing pancreatic cancer. It is a rapid test, so you just need to wait for like 15 minutes for the test to complete. You don't have to wait for a day or two for the results to come out. It is completely point of care and at-home test, so that you can do it at home just like as a pregnancy test strip. You don't need a technician or any expert to be there to guide you for it. You won't require any special machinery to read out the results. So you don't need anything. Just collect the raw saliva sample, put it in, get the results. So completely not. And yes, it requires saliva, which is completely non-invasive. So you don't have to prick your blood. You don't have to go through any invasion. So it is completely non-invasive. It's very cheap, 1,000 times cheaper than a CA99 blood, than the MRI scan. It's one of a kind. It's highly accurate and a rapid test as well.
I see. So, what were the biggest setbacks that you had to face in hindsight?
The biggest setbacks that we had to face first was getting money to invest, because it's highly costly. And, when you actually frame a hypothesis, it seems highly unlikely that it will work, because it's something magic. Because, in thousands and thousands of biomolecules in your fluids, you have to target one, and that should be an indicator for cancer. And when we talk about physics and when we talk about other subjects, things are measured in macro scales. When rockets launch off, they are measured in 10,000 kilonewtons of thrust. When we go into biology, we go into the micro scale. So when we had to order our antibody, we got 100 microliters of antibodies. That is this much, for I think 60,000 rupees. That is I think $850. That was just 100 microliters. And if you didn't use it prudently, you'll just use it in 2-3 tests, just 2-3 strips, and you have to dilute it by a factor of 10,000 and 15,000 at times. So you need to pipette it and then dilute it and stuff. And so first of all, understanding it was also complex, but yes, it was highly expensive, and pitching in money, it was kind of a challenge at first. Secondly, finding people to lead you and believe in you, because people at our age, they don't do these kind of research. And so doctors, they don't likely believe that they are highly passionate towards it, and they think that it's some kind of a fling that they just want to do, but they're not serious about it. And so it was hard to find initial mentors. And the third is time. It takes a lot of time. And that was, I think, the biggest setback. Ordering took us 2 months, getting results out, collecting samples and everything. It takes a lot of time, especially in biomedical research. So yeah, money, time, getting people to believe in you.
Okay, so how did the money part work out?
So we had to finally pitch in our own money, but we participated at different competitions and we got a cash reward at a few, which helped us out a lot. Like we got, I think we got $75,000 at IIT Bombay. We got 1 lakh from CSR Innovation Award. We got 1 lakh from Bal Shakti Puraskar. So that kind of helped us progress along the way.
Okay, so as you just mentioned, you received the Bal Shakti Puraskar for this project. So how was the whole experience? How has it been meeting the president, the prime minister, and all the other awardees as well?
Yeah, that is once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm fortunate enough, if things work out, they invite the alumni next year. So I'm going to see another glimpse of it. So my elder brother, he won this award in 2017 for the first time for his project. And that was how he was the first student from Chhattisgarh to do that. And everyone was like so amazed in my school. It was like we had to do this again. And we won. When we got selected, it was like we were shouting with joy because they selected just 50 people this year. And we were so scared. We were so damn scared because you were going to be living for 7 days for like 50 hand-picked students, children from all across India, and when we read the resumes, some had 2-3 world records, some had 5 international gold medals under their belt, some had some were authors of 2-3 different books. Their organizations that impacted 50,000 people. So it was so intimidating at first, but going deep into it, it was like everyone was chill so much, and they were just like us, normal human beings, just had abnormal dreams. And then meeting the president was, of course, when you walk down the aisle to then get the medal, you feel really proud. You can't deny it. Anything, you just can't deny that feeling. Meeting Modi, it was actually, I liked it better than meeting the president. I just don't know why, but Modi has an amazing aura around him, and I got to talk to him like for 5 seconds when he showed me off. So he didn't show me off, but he had to do talk to other students as well. It was like a flabbergasting opportunity, flabbergasting. You once in a lifetime.
Okay, and what about the other awardees? Do you want to talk more about, like, did you make any good friendships there?
Yeah, so they were so amazing people. Like you kind of think that getting to those heights, they would be engulfed in pride, and it'll be really hard to talk to them because they'll intimidate you with strong words and something like that. That is the exact opposite. They are the humblest people out there. Some were a little bit hard to talk to, but a majority, like 99% of the 95%, everyone was so humble, and they were looking for people like us. I mean, you search for people like you the whole life, and then you get those kind of people there. The best part is they were passionate about doing something, just not sitting back and just letting the world sway away. They were passionate about doing something, and so intellectual in their respective fields. I mean, you talk to someone who knows programming, talk to someone who knows machine learning, you can go in depth about every single equation. You can go in depth about the anything. Like they don't know very broad knowledge fields. They do, but the mastery that they have in one field, it's like it's as deep as a well. So it was just amazing. We had made a lot of great friendships. It was amazing. Still
It's quite inspiring. Yep,
there. Yeah.
definitely quite inspiring.
So CancerEX was a team project with Anmol Rathi. Shout out to Anmol if he watches this. Could you talk a bit about the experience of working in a team? Are there any pros or cons to it?
Sure. So working in a team, there are a lot of pros and there are some cons as well. So I'll talk openly about it. The pros are you have the best part about working in a team is that you have support all the time. So even if you mess up, you mess up together. Even if you win, you win together. But you always have support, and you're not always there to cry alone or to celebrate alone. So you always have someone behind you. So if you win something, you can celebrate with someone who is feeling equally enthusiastic and high on life. And then if you lose something, or if you mess up something, then you can go on and cry on the person who's feeling down as well at the same level. And then for every decision that you take, you get someone to say that yes, this decision is correct, would be correct for us. So when the project reaches at a very high level, you need to decide very big things that actually will change your life forever, right? So you need to think about, when we were having this conversation about applying to Y Combinator, which is the world's biggest seed fund startup, not seed fund, but it is the world's biggest startup incubator. So it was something that might change our life, right? And so when you have to decide these things alone, it might be really intimidating, because once you get selected, you might have to leave your school and college for it. But when you talk it with someone else, you know that yes, they're gonna have to do the same thing, and so you're just not alone in this. So that's the best thing about it. Second best thing is it's really huge, because you get a lot of work done. You can divide it. Of course, the more people that you have, the more interest fields and skill sets that you include. But I suggest working in pairs or in trials. That works best, because having too many people, not everyone will work as enthusiastically as you would want to. So pairs work out the best. And the best part is you can, divide the subject fields. So I take up the programming part. He takes up finding the people and connection parts, because both of them are equally important. And then we work together on the research part. And so I don't have to do the connections part. I don't have to reach out to doctors, contact with them and do all the field work and stuff as much as I can work on the web application part of it. And then he doesn't have to worry about programming part of it, because I'm solely handling it. So that is really something cool, because you can develop some things that are out of bounds of your skill sets. The cons is sometimes you'll have to work alone. Sometimes they might not be able to pitch in that much time. You'll have a lot of clashes. So just make sure that your relationship is gonna change forever. So you're not gonna be those jolly good friends that are gonna chill out and things are gonna go everything on the track. However good friends you are, however understanding you are. So when you start a project with someone, just make sure that you're ready to put your friendship in jeopardy. And that is something to keep in mind. But yes, the bond tightens. You travel a lot. You have an amazing experience. You learn so much with them. But yes, you're gonna have fights. You're gonna have clashes, and yes, it might put your friendship in jeopardy at times. That is a con. The second con, I think that's the only con. Other than that, I think everything is all right. When you have so much in, like, even if you want to buy something, you can pitch in the money, so it saves a lot of money. You travel together, so it's kind of safe for the family. So I think it's more pros than cons. I think you have to divide whatever thing that you win. You have to divide the credibility, and there might be times when one person starts working harder, the other takes it's slightly easy. If you ensure that doesn't happen, then I think it's good.
Okay. The best work has been done in teams, historically speaking.
So, as you already mentioned, the role of mentors can be very important, especially in such a big and impactful initiative. Could you talk about maybe first how your school has supported you? And then second, maybe you could just mention the influential people in your life.
Sure. The answer to the second one will just go on forever. So I'm just going
We'll
to
keep it short.
Yeah. The first one, school. Since I keep bringing my elder brother here, but he was the one who started everything up. And he was, I think, one of the biggest mentors to me personally, because he was there all the time till he went to college. He's still there, but not physically. But yeah, he was there all the time in the initial stages of the project. And then the other most important figure in that was there, two most important were, first one is Mr. Sushil Kumar Pandya, chemistry teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He guided my brother and another girl from our school to mentor their project, and he guided me and Anmol for our project. So he was there from day one, from the first hour, sitting with us, deciding what we had to do. He was the one who proofread all our mails, all our research papers. He traveled with us in vans in striking heat to doctors. He sat there with us. He sharpened our presentations, everything. He was there from day one. He had backed us with such a humongous amount of emotional support that we were ready to take any decisions that we wanted to. He traveled with us to each and every fair that we went to in India and to the Genius Olympiad that happened in the US. So he was there, he is still there, and that is one of the biggest boon any student can get when he or she wants to start something. That an elder, a wise person is standing by their side all the time. Our principal sir is also highly motivated about it. So whenever we required anything by the school, any bunking, we bunk a lot of classes. I mean, they allow us to sit in the lab, library and work. But whenever we needed any help from the school, our school always stood up. They never backed out. Anything they wanted to send, they pitched in their money, their support, their guidance to help us fly. So it was an immense, immeasurable amount of support from our school, especially from our principal sir and Sushil sir. Other than that, we had found amazing mentors that we needed specifically at different time steps. So at we had, I'll just list down the names. We had two professors from IIT, Dr. Rajkumar Tumar and Dr. Pranjal Chandra. We had with the current one that we're working with. He's an amazing person who's actually supervising a test wholly. His name is Dr. Kishla Kumar Sinha. He is from CSIR. There is Dr. Devapriya Rath. There is Dr. Devendra Nayak, who is actually, he is the owner of a hospital who helps us with everything. In the middle of the night, if I want to store any reagent in negative 80 degrees, I can just go to his path labs and just store it. If I want to get any unused reagent, I can just simply go and pick that up. So he has an immense support provided. There's just a lot of people. We were guided by a lot of people when we got into Diamond Challenge and the Sparking Accelerator program. And I'm going to receive another amazing world-class mentor on August 15th as part of the Global Team Leaders program. And so I'm really enthusiastic about it as well. There's another guy, Gaurav Bhatt, who just connected with us recently, and he's helping us, further this initiative, help us get more funding. And so there's just a lot of amazing people connected to this initiative.
That goes to show how well the benefits of having a good network and just being well connected.
Yeah, it does.
You already mentioned in a previous answer that you were a part of Teen Spark Accelerator program, and you were actually the winner, and you were also finalist for Diamond Challenge. Could you talk about your interest in entrepreneurship, like personally, and how has participating in these challenges really changed the face of CancerEX?
So entrepreneurship, I've always been fascinated by it. My ideal, Elon Musk. You can see two posters just in front of me. You can't actually, but yeah, there are two posters in front of me. My laptop's wallpaper is Elon Musk, and I'm reading his biography. You can see this. Right. So I'm so much fascinated by this guy. He's running 5 companies. One is taking us to space. One is transitioning us to sustainable energy. One is, I'm not going to list them, but he is running 5 companies. He's the world's most influential entrepreneur at the time. And since I was a little kid, I wanted to be some, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, something like that. But I didn't have any idea about how to do that. I mean, one thing that I know is everyone is an entrepreneur. Elon Musk may be a hard tech entrepreneur. Mark Zuckerberg might be a soft tech entrepreneur. But I knew that entrepreneur was common in every one of them. And they were businessmen. They had built empires. Wanted to do that because it fascinates me that someone could have an idea and that, it could create, you can sensationalize the world about it, create an empire and run it. And so I wanted to do something like that. And that's why I was fascinated in entrepreneurship. I didn't take commerce because the accounts part and, the actual studying markets part, that kind of bores me. I don't want to, what is, and everything. So the actual study behind it, I'm not much interested in that. I'm into practical thing about what is a minimum viable product. How can you talk to consumers? How can you grow into $100 billion business? Stuff like that. So when we first heard about Diamond Challenge, we thought it might be a change of pace because we were it was highly cumbersome going to science exhibitions because they just challenged you so much, especially going to IRIS. They tell you on their face that this is not good. This is, you just, create some random, you just create something randomly, and this is just a piece of mess. So we were so into that, we thought it might be a change of pace to participate at an international competition, that too about entrepreneurship. And so just completely transformed our project from early detection of pancreatic cancer. And that's when we coined the name CancerEX for the first time. And that's how we turned this into a startup. And now if you want to know about it, it's not a project, it's a startup. So that was the transition from project to startup. And then we just simply applied it. We didn't knew we could get in because there was 6 stages. But then we just simply got in like 1 and then 2 and then 3. And I'm like, dude, what is happening? He's like, I don't know. Let's keep on moving. And we created a 5-minute pitch. And then they invited us that you are a semi-finalist. We're so excited because we got to go to US. That was in April, a month before ISEF. So I was supposed to go to New York in March. Then again, a place near New York in April, and then again for ISEF to the California part in May. So I was like, my life is set. I'm going to US 3 times, and this is so sick. We started working towards it. Then the pandemic happened. Everything was converted to a virtual summit, but it was an amazing experience. I mean, the mentors who guided us gave us some real life advice about how these things work out. That was sick advice that no one else could give us, because they have been mentoring thousands of projects like these. It was a really huge experience, and that's what led us to Spark Teen Accelerator. So Diamond Challenge, actually, once the competition ends, they hand you a check if you win. So we didn't win. We were in the finalists. That was 36 finalists in our cohort around the world. But at the same time, I guess we applied to Spark Team. And just like that, it was 5-6 stages, and then we were getting in, and everyone was just fascinated by the idea. And we were like, dude, we need to make something about this. I mean, we need to do, we didn't win the Diamond Challenge, we need to do something about Spark Team. So we started working on it. We got into this semi-final round, the final round of it. We got into the final round of it, and then we had 2 interviews. And after those interviews, we got into the top 9 out of everyone. And then 4 were supposed to go into the Accelerator program and get a cash award, and the other 5 wouldn't. And we had another series of interview, and we finally got into it's the 3rd position for a $1,500 reward. And then we got into Accelerator. We got the mail, 4 days ago. So we still don't know much about the Accelerator. But yeah, this is something they're going to help us out with amazing advisors and mentors. They're going to stay connected for a year, and they're going to give us $1,500 to fund the project. So It's an amazing thing. And I think that's the path forward to it. So started with a science project, we'll go on an entrepreneurship road.
Okay, that's pretty cool. All the best with this. Yeah. So finally, do you have one short piece of advice for any young students looking to get into innovative endeavors, or any message that you want to send out to our viewers and listeners?
There's actually 2 short things that I want to talk about. First thing is to finding people who are doing this and just connecting with them somehow. I was lucky enough that I had my brother around who kept motivating me while I wanted to play badminton and, learn to throw cards. And he was the one who got me into programming, and I'm so highly thankful to him for that. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they just don't find people like that. And so giving a practical piece of advice, get on LinkedIn. It's a good social media. Get on Twitter. It's also a good social media. And then follow the people who are at the top of their fields. Follow young leaders if you're young. And then just somehow, write cold emails to them, write to 50 or 100. Some of them are going to respond. Just connect to them, anything. Like, just tell them that I really love your project, want to connect with you, want to help you at some sorts. And these people are really humble, and they would love to get you on board. once you get on board, you actually taste how being in that position feels like. You feel a part of inclusion. And once you just connecting with those people, that's a really huge step in you starting something of your own. And the second thing is, don't set really humongous goals, and do have a dream. Do have a dream that is unachievable in your entire life. Do have something that is beyond yourself, but set monthly KPIs, and set something that you can kind of achieve. It's hard, but you can still achieve it, because uh, if you set something really big and you are not able to do it, you lose motivation, and that is something that a lot of people do. So have small steps, have a big goal, have a big mission that is beyond yourself, but do something in steps and connect with awesome people. There are so many amazing people out there, and on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Don't try following them. Don't try searching on Instagram and Facebook. You're not going to learn something good. Go on LinkedIn, go on Twitter. It's the good social media.
Yep, that's great advice. So thank you, Harsh, for joining us today, and thanks to our audience for tuning in. We'll see you in our future episodes.